Danny Cole had seen death before. He had watched soldiers take their last breath on battlefield stretchers. He had held the hands of dying men while machines beeped their final warnings. But he had never seen anything like the alien princess bleeding out on his medical table. The diplomatic Starship Horizon's Grace was supposed to be safe. It was neutral ground, a place where humans and the Volante Empire could talk without weapons pointed at each other. For 30 years, the two species had lived in cold silence, neither trusting the other. The Volante were ancient, powerful, and proud. They looked at humans the way a giant might look at an insect. Interesting, perhaps, but certainly not important. Princess Viana Solith was the third heir to their empire. She had silver skin that seemed to glow under the ship's lights and eyes like liquid gold. She had come aboard as an observer, watching the peace negotiations with the careful attention of someone who would one day help rule 1,000 worlds. She rarely spoke to the humans. When she did, her voice carried the weight of someone who believed she was better than everyone around her. Now she was dying. The attack had come from nowhere. A small shuttle had docked with the Horizon's Grace under false credentials. 3 Volante extremists had stormed the diplomatic hall with weapons that fired beams of concentrated heat. They screamed about purity and tradition before the security teams cut them down, but not before one of them had put a burning hole through the princess's chest. Danny had been eating lunch in the medical bay when the alarm started screaming. By the time he reached the diplomatic hall, Commander Lisa Grant was already there, shouting orders while Volante guards formed a protective circle around their fallen princess. "Get her to medical now." The commander ordered. Danny helped carry Viana's limp body through the corridors. Her silver blood left a trail on the floor behind them. It was warm against his hands, warmer than human blood, and it smelled like copper and something sweet he could not name. Dr. Sareth Mole was waiting in the medical bay. He was a Volante physician, one of the few who had agreed to serve on a joint human-alien vessel. His 4-fingered hands moved with desperate speed as he connected monitors to the princess's body. "She is losing too much blood," he said. His voice was calm, but Danny could see fear in his golden eyes. "Her heart is failing." "Then give her more blood," Danny said. "I cannot." Dr. Mole's hands stopped moving for just a moment. "Her bloodline is ancient and rare. There are perhaps 12 Volante in the entire empire who share her blood type. None of them are within 100 light-years of this ship." Danny watched the monitors. The numbers were falling fast. He had seen those patterns before. Without intervention, Viana would be dead in minutes. "There has to be something we can do," he said. Dr. Mole shook his head slowly. "Cross-species transfusion is impossible. Our biologies are too different. Human blood would poison her system. It would kill her faster than her wounds." The princess's eyes fluttered open. They found Danny's face and held there for a moment. She was scared. Behind all her pride and her ancient bloodline, she was just a young woman who did not want a strange ship far from home. Danny turned to Dr. Mole. "Run a compatibility scan anyway. It would be a waste of time. We have about 3 minutes of time left." "Run the scan." Dr. Mole hesitated, then moved to the genetic analyzer. He took a sample of Viana's blood and then drew a small amount from Danny's arm. The machine hummed as it compared the two samples. "This is pointless," the doctor muttered. "Human and Volante blood have nothing in common. The proteins are completely different. The cellular structure is—" He stopped talking. His golden eyes went wide. "What?" Danny stepped closer to the screen. "This is impossible." Dr. Mole's voice was barely a whisper. "Your blood contains a dormant protein marker. It matches a sequence in her bloodline. A sequence we thought existed only in ancient Volante genetics." "What does that mean?" "It means there's a small chance. A very small chance Your blood might not kill her. Dr. Mole looked at Danny with an expression that mixed hope and terror. But it also might destroy her faster. We have never attempted this. There is no research, no data, no precedent. Danny looked at the princess. Her breathing was shallow now. The monitors showed her heart struggling to beat. Do it, he said. You do not understand the risk. If this fails, you could be blamed for her death. The Volante Empire would demand justice. Your life would be, she's dying right now. Do it. Dr. Mole prepared the transfusion equipment with shaking hands. Danny lay down on the bed next to Vienna and felt the needle slide into his arm. He watched his blood, red and ordinary, flow through the tube toward her silver body. The first drops entered her. Nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. Vienna's body jerked violently. Her back arched off the table as if an electric current was passing through her. The monitors exploded with noise, alarms screaming from every direction. Her silver blood seemed to glow beneath her skin, mixing with the red of Danny's donation in ways that should have been impossible. Dr. Mole reached for the emergency stop. But Danny grabbed his arm. Wait, Danny said. She is dying. Look at her wounds. Dr. Mole looked. His mouth fell open. The hole in Vienna's chest was closing. The burned flesh was knitting itself back together, silver and gold threads weaving across the wound like a living tapestry. Her skin rippled with colors that did not exist in any medical textbook. Then, as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The alarms went silent. The monitors flatlined. The glow beneath Vienna's skin faded to nothing. Dr. Mole stood frozen, staring at the screens. Danny sat up slowly, pulling the needle from his arm. He felt dizzy and weak, but he did not look away from the princess's still form. Is she? Before he could finish the question, the monitors beeped, once, twice, then a steady, strong rhythm. Vienna's heart was beating. Her chest rose and fell with deep, even breaths. The wound that had been killing her moments ago was now just a faint silver scar. Dr. Mole collapsed into a chair. This is not possible, he kept saying. This is not possible. Commander Grant's voice crackled over the intercom. Medical Bay, report. What is the princess's status? Danny looked at Vienna's peaceful face, at the impossible scar, at the readings that showed her vitals stronger than they had been before the attack. She's alive, he said. I don't know how, but she's alive. He did not know it yet, but in saving one life, Danny Cole had just changed the fate of 2 civilizations, and nobody expected what would happen next. 12 hours passed before Princess Vienna opened her eyes. Danny had not left the medical bay. He sat in a hard plastic chair in the corner, watching the monitors track her heartbeat and breathing. Dr. Mole had run every test he could think of, taking sample after sample of her blood, studying it under machines that hummed with alien technology. Each time, he would shake his head and mutter words in his native language that Danny did not understand. Commander Lisa Grant stood by the door, her arms crossed and her face tight with worry. She was a practical woman who had spent 20 years in the Human Coalition fleet. She had survived 3 wars and countless diplomatic disasters. But this situation was beyond anything in her experience. The Volante High Council has been informed, she said quietly. High Chancellor Torvik is on his way. He should arrive within 6 hours. Danny knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Torvik was the princess's uncle, the most powerful politician in the Volante Empire, and a man who had spent his entire career arguing that humans were a threat that needed to be controlled or destroyed. If he learned that a human had put his blood into the royal princess, there would be consequences. What do we tell him? Danny asked. The truth, Commander Grant said. That you saved her life. Will he see it that way? The commander did not answer. They both knew the answer was probably no. A soft sound came from the medical bed. Vienna was stirring, her silver fingers curling against the sheets. Her golden eyes opened slowly, blinking against the light. Dr. Mole rushed to her side. "Your Highness, please remain still. You have been through a serious trauma. Your body needs time, too. I feel fine." Viana's voice was stronger than it should have been. She sat up in the bed, looking down at her hands as if seeing them for the first time. "I feel more than fine. I feel different." She pulled aside the medical gown and touched the place where the weapon had burned through her chest. The wound was completely gone. In its place was a thin silver scar surrounded by faint lines of gold that traced patterns across her skin like delicate artwork. "What happened to me?" she asked. Dr. Mole explained the transfusion, the impossible compatibility, the healing that defied all medical knowledge. Viana listened without speaking, her eyes moving to Danny's face several times during the story. "Human blood," she said when the doctor finished. "You put human blood in my body. It was the only option," Danny said. "You were dying." Viana was quiet for a long moment. In that silence, Danny prepared himself for anger, for disgust, for the cold dismissal he had seen from Volante nobles many times before. Humans were lesser creatures in their eyes. The idea of human blood flowing through royal veins would be seen as contamination by most of her people. "Thank you," she said. Danny blinked. "What? You saved my life." "At great risk to yourself." Viana swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood. Her movements were fluid and graceful, showing no trace of her recent injury. "Among my people, such a debt is not forgotten." Dr. Mole was staring at his medical scanner. "Your Highness, these readings are extraordinary. Your cellular regeneration is operating at 300% above normal levels. Your sensory response times have decreased by half. Your blood chemistry has been fundamentally altered." "I can feel it," Viana said. She raised her hand and studied it. "Everything is sharper. I can hear the engines humming 6 decks below us. I can smell the cleaning chemicals they used in the corridor this morning." She looked at Danny. "I can hear your heartbeat." Commander Grant stepped forward. "With respect, Your Highness, we need to discuss what happens when your uncle arrives. Uncle Torvik will demand the human's arrest." Vanna's voice was flat. "He will call this contamination of the royal bloodline. He will want to make an example." "I won't let that happen," Commander Grant said. "He's under diplomatic protection. My uncle commands the largest fleet in the Empire. Your protection means little against his will." The tension in the room grew thick. Danny felt his chest tighten. He had known the risk when he volunteered for the transfusion. He had accepted that he might die. But now, facing the reality of Volante justice, fear crept into his heart. "I will speak with him," Viana said. Everyone looked at her. "I am third in line for the throne. My word carries weight, even with Torvik." She met Danny's eyes. "You saved my life. I will not let them take yours." Before anyone could respond, the door to the medical bay slid open. A Volante scholar entered, his robes marking him as a member of the religious order that served the imperial family. His face was pale, his eyes wide with an emotion that looked like awe. "Your Highness," he said, dropping to one knee. "The sacred texts. We have found something." "What texts?" Viana asked. "The prophecy of the first light. It speaks of a time when the blood of two peoples will merge, and from that union, a new strength will emerge." The scholar's voice trembled. "The prophecy says this will mark the renewal, the beginning of a great change for our civilization." Dr. Mole shook his head. "That is mythology. Ancient superstition, is it?" The scholar looked at Viana's transformed skin, at the golden patterns that had appeared where no patterns should exist. "The texts describe exactly what has happened here. The silver and gold. The healing beyond natural limits. The awakening of forgotten power. Vienna touched the golden lines on her chest. What else does the prophecy say? It says the renewal will come through the seedlings of ash. The scholar's eyes moved to Danny, a lost branch of our family tree, separated from us in the ancient days. Beings who traveled far away and were forgotten by time. Commander Grant frowned. What does that have to do with humans? The scholar stood slowly. Perhaps everything? Perhaps nothing. But I believe we must find out. He looked at Vienna with desperate hope. Your Highness, if the prophecy is true, it could change everything we know about our place in the galaxy. About human place in the galaxy. 6 hours later, High Chancellor Torvik arrived. His ship was a warship, not a diplomatic vessel. It hung in space beside the horizon's grace, like a predator waiting to strike. When Torvik came aboard, he brought 40 armed guards with him. His silver skin was darker than Vienna's. His golden eyes cold and sharp. He looked at Danny the way someone might look at an insect that had crawled onto their dinner plate. This creature put its blood into my niece, he said to Commander Grant. I demand he be handed over immediately for trial. Denied, Commander Grant said. He's protected under the diplomatic charter. Torvik's eyes narrowed. You think your human laws will protect him? I think starting an interstellar war over one medic is not in anyone's interest, Chancellor. The tension in the room was suffocating. Danny stood between two Marines, feeling very small and very human. Then Vienna stepped forward. Uncle, she said, I am alive because of this man. I will not allow you to harm him. Torvik stared at her. His eyes traced the golden patterns on her exposed skin, and something flickered across his face. Fear, perhaps. Or hatred. You do not know what he has done to you, Torvik said quietly. But I will find out. And when I do, there will be consequences. He turned and walked away, his guards following like shadows. Vienna watched him go. Then she turned to Danny. We need to talk, she said. In private. And Danny knew that his life had just changed forever. 2 weeks after the transfusion, Danny stood on the surface of an alien world for the first time in his life. Sereth Prime was the heart of the Volanthi Empire. It was a planet of silver towers and golden domes, of floating gardens and rivers that glowed with bioluminescent life. Billions of Volanthi lived here, their civilization stretching back over 100,000 years. Compared to them, humanity was a child just learning to walk. Danny felt very small standing in the shadow of their ancient temples. He had not expected to come here. When Vienna had asked him to travel to her homeworld, he had thought she was joking. But her eyes had been serious, and her voice had carried a weight that made him understand this was not a request. The truth of what happened to me must be found, she had said. And I believe the answer lies in the sacred archives. You must come with me, Danny Cole. You are part of this now. His friend Ben Weaver had volunteered to pilot the small shuttle that brought them. Ben was a human pilot who had served alongside Danny for 3 years. A man who never backed down from danger and never stopped telling bad jokes. So, Ben had said during the journey, you saved the princess with your blood, and now she's taking you home to meet the family. Sounds like a fairy tale. It's not like that, Danny had replied. Sure it isn't. Ben had grinned. Just be careful, okay? These people have been looking down on humans since before we discovered fire. One good deed doesn't change centuries of contempt. Now Danny walked through the streets of the holy city of Ethos, following Vienna toward the great archive where the oldest knowledge of her people was kept. Volanthi citizens stopped to stare as they passed. Some looked at Danny with curiosity. Most looked at him with disgust, but a few looked at Vienna and whispered words that sounded like prayers. The news of her transformation had spread across the empire. Some called it a miracle. Others called it a corruption. The debates raged in every corner of Volanthi society. tearing at the fabric of their ancient beliefs. High Chancellor Torveg had returned ahead of them. His influence was everywhere, his voice speaking through news channels and official announcements. He called the transfusion an abomination. He demanded that Vayana submit to purification rituals. He suggested that Danny had deliberately poisoned the princess with some human disease, but Vayana refused to hide. She walked through the city with her head held high, the golden patterns on her skin visible for all to see. She was not ashamed of what she had become. The archive was a massive structure carved into the side of a mountain. Its doors were made of stone so old that the carvings on their surface had worn smooth. Inside, the air was cool and dry, and the smell of ancient paper filled Danny's lungs. Elder Kaya, North was waiting for them. She was the oldest Volante Danny had ever seen. Her silver skin had faded almost to white, and her golden eyes had dimmed to a soft amber. But her mind was sharp, and her voice carried the authority of someone who had spent 200 years studying the secrets of the universe. "Princess Vayana," she said, bowing her head, "and the human who changed everything. Welcome to the archive." "Elder Kaya," Vayana said, "we need to see the forbidden texts. The original records of the First Light prophecy." The elder's eyes flickered with something that might have been fear. "Those texts have not been read in 1,000 years. They are considered dangerous. I need to know the truth about what I have become, about what humans really are." Elder Kaya studied Vayana for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly and led them deep into the archive. Through corridors lined with crystals that glowed with stored knowledge. Past chambers filled with artifacts from ages long forgotten. Finally, they reached a vault sealed with locks that required both genetic codes and ancient passwords to open. Inside, a single crystal sat on a pedestal, pulsing with soft light. "This crystal contains the original words of our founders," Elder Kaya said. "The truth they recorded before politics and pride corrupted our history." She activated the crystal. Light poured from its surface, forming images and words in the air above them. Danny watched as the story of the Volante people unfolded before his eyes. Long ago, over 100,000 years in the past, the Volante had not been alone. They had been part of a larger family, two species born from the same genetic origin. They had built civilizations together, explored the galaxy side by side, shared knowledge and resources and dreams. But then a great cataclysm had come. A disaster so terrible that it threatened to destroy everything they had built. The two species had made a desperate choice. They would separate, sending half their people to the far side of the galaxy, hoping that at least one group would survive. The Volante had stayed behind and rebuilt their civilization. Over thousands of years, they had forgotten their lost siblings. The memory had faded into myth, and myth had faded into legend, and legend had faded into nothing. But the other group had survived too. They had found a small blue planet in a distant arm of the galaxy. They had lost their technology, their history, their memory of who they had been. They had started over from nothing. They had become humans. "We are family," Vayana whispered, staring at the images floating in the air. "Humans and Volante. We share the same origin." "Yes," Elder Kaya said. "The seedlings of ash, we called them. Our lost brothers and sisters. We thought they were dead. We mourned them for centuries before forgetting them entirely." Danny felt his legs go weak. He sat down on the cold stone floor, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. All the years of Volante contempt, all the times humans had been called primitive, inferior, worthless. And now this ancient crystal was telling him that they were the same. That human blood and Volante blood had once flowed from the same source. "The prophecy," Vayana said. "The renewal. It predicted this reunion?" "Yes. The founders knew that someday the two branches might find each other again. They encoded certain genetic markers in both bloodlines, dormant abilities that would only activate when the two were combined. Elder Kaya looked at Danny. Your blood did not contaminate the princess. It awakened something that had been sleeping inside her for 100,000 years. What does this mean? Danny asked. For humans? For Volanthi? Before the elder could answer, the sound of boots echoed through the corridor outside. Harsh voices shouted commands in the Volanthi language. Torvik, Vianna said, her voice hardening. He knows we are here. The Chancellor has declared the Forbidden Texts to be heresy, Elder Kaya said. Anyone who reads them is guilty of treason against the Empire. He wants to destroy the truth. He wants to destroy anything that threatens his power. The elder pressed a small crystal into Danny's hand. This contains a copy of everything you have seen. You must protect it. The vault doors exploded inward. Torvik's soldiers poured through the opening. Weapons raised and aimed at Danny's chest. Torvik himself walked in behind them, his face twisted with cold rage. Princess Vianna, he said, you are under arrest for treason. The human will be executed immediately. Vianna stepped in front of Danny, her body glowing with the golden light that had become part of her. You will not touch him, she said. He is under my protection. Your protection means nothing. You have been corrupted by human contamination. You are no longer fit to represent the royal family. I am more Volanthi now than I have ever been. Vianna's voice carried a power that made the soldiers hesitate. I carry the blood of our founders, awakened for the first time in 100,000 years. And I will not let you bury the truth again. Torvik raised his hand to give the order to fire, and Vianna made her choice. She grabbed Danny's arm and ran. The escape from the sacred city was chaos and fire. Vianna moved with a speed that Danny could barely follow. Her body glowed with golden light as she pulled him through ancient corridors, past screaming scholars, over fallen stones. The abilities awakened by the transfusion had grown stronger every day, and now she used them without hesitation. Behind them, Torvik's soldiers fired their weapons. Beams of burning light scorched the walls around them. But Vianna seemed to know where each shot would land before it arrived, twisting her body and pulling Danny aside with split-second timing. Ben, she shouted into a communication device. We need extraction now. Already on my way. Ben's voice crackled through static. Landing pad 7. 60 seconds. They burst through a side door into the open air. The sun was setting over the holy city, painting the silver towers in shades of orange and red. On a platform above them, Ben's shuttle was descending through the sky, its engines screaming against gravity. But between them and the platform stood 20 soldiers, their weapons already aimed. Vianna did not slow down. She let go of Danny's arm and threw herself at the soldiers with her bare hands. Her movements were a blur of silver and gold, her fists striking with force that sent armored bodies flying through the air. The golden patterns on her skin pulsed with each impact. And Danny realized he was watching something that had not been seen in the galaxy for 100,000 years. Volanthi with the power of the ancients. Fully awakened in 12 seconds. Every soldier was on the ground. Vianna stood among them, breathing hard, her eyes bright with fierce energy. She looked at Danny and extended her hand. Come on, she said. They ran up the stairs to the landing pad. Ben had the shuttle door open, his face pale with fear, but his hands steady on the controls. Get in, he yelled. We have about 30 warships trying to lock onto us right now. The shuttle lifted off before Danny could even strap himself in. The city of Ethos fell away beneath them, and then the atmosphere itself was gone, replaced by the cold darkness of space. Where do we go? Danny asked. The border, Vianna said. Human space. It's the only place Torvik cannot follow without starting a war. The journey took 6 hours. For most of that time, they were hunted. Torvik's ships chased them across star systems, firing weapons that filled the darkness with deadly light. Ben flew like a man possessed, threading the shuttle through asteroid fields and around moons. Using every trick he had learned in 15 years of piloting Dot, by the time they reached the human border, the shuttle's hull was scorched black and 2 of its engines were dead. But they were alive. Admiral Kate Holloway was waiting for them. Her fleet hung in space like a wall of steel and fire. 50 human warships, their weapons charged and ready. They were smaller than the Volanthi vessels that had been chasing them, less advanced and less powerful. But they were there, standing firm. "This is Admiral Holloway." Her voice came through the communication system. "Volanthi pursuers, you have entered human-protected space. Turn back now or face the consequences." The Volanthi ships stopped at the border. They hovered there for a long moment, their weapons still pointed at the shuttle. Then, slowly, they turned and retreated into the darkness. Danny let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. "Welcome home," Admiral Holloway said. 2 days later, Diana stood on the bridge of the human flagship and broadcast a message to every corner of the Volanthi Empire. Her face appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. Citizens stopped in the streets to watch. Soldiers paused in their duties. Even the Empress herself, silent for so long in her palace, turned her golden eyes to the transmission. "My people," Diana said, "I speak to you today with a truth that has been hidden for 100,000 years. We are not alone in the universe. We never have been." She told them everything. The ancient records. The lost siblings who had traveled to the far side of the galaxy. The humans who had risen from nothing to reach the stars without knowing who they really were. "Humans are not lesser beings," Diana said. "They are family. They are the seedlings of ash, returned to us after all this time. And the blood that flows in my veins now proves that we are stronger together than we ever were apart." The Empire fractured within hours. Some Volanthi embraced the truth. They gathered in the streets, celebrating the discovery of their lost siblings. They spoke of peace, of unity, of a new age of cooperation between species. Others, led by Torvik, called it heresy. They burned images of Vayana. They attacked anyone who spoke in support of humans. They demanded that the old order be preserved, that the superiority of the Volanthi people be maintained at any cost. Torvik himself appeared on the communication networks, his face twisted with hatred. "The princess has been corrupted," he declared. "Human contamination has poisoned her mind. She is no longer fit to represent our great civilization. I call upon all true Volanthi to stand with me against this threat. We will purge the human stain from our empire, starting with the traitor who calls herself princess." Civil war seemed inevitable, but then something unexpected happened. Prince Sareth Vorn, Diana's older brother and first in line for the throne, broke his long silence. He had always been a quiet man, a scholar more interested in ancient history than politics. Most people thought he would simply do whatever his uncle told him. They were wrong. "I have seen the records myself," Prince Sareth announced. "Our sister speaks the truth. The humans are our lost family, and we have treated them with cruelty and contempt for far too long." His words split the empire even further. Families turned against each other. Soldiers refused to follow orders. Ships designed for war sat idle as their crews argued about which side to support. And in the chaos, Torvik made his move. He launched a coup against the imperial throne. His loyal forces stormed the palace, taking control of the government. The Empress disappeared, her fate unknown. Prince Sareth barely escaped with his life, fleeing to join his sister at the human border. Torvik declared himself regent of the empire. His first official act was to order the execution of Princess Vayana. His second was to declare war on humanity. The human infection must be eliminated, he said in his announcement. Their very existence is a threat to everything we are. We will destroy them completely, and when they are gone, we will purify our own people of any who supported them. His war fleet gathered at the border. 300 ships, the most powerful armada the Volanthi had ever assembled. Against them stood Admiral Holloway's 50 vessels and a handful of Volanthi, ships whose crews had defected to Vayana's side. Danny stood on the observation deck of the human flagship, watching the enemy fleet through the window. The lights of 300 warships filled the darkness like angry stars. "We can't win this," Ben said quietly. "Not in a straight fight. There are too many of them." "Then we won't fight straight," Vayana said. She stood beside Danny, her golden patterns glowing softly in the dim light. "Torvik's power comes from lies. He has hidden the truth from our people for too long. If we can show them proof, undeniable proof, everything will change." She looked at Danny. "The crystal Elder Kaya gave you. It contains the original records, the genetic evidence, everything. If we can broadcast it directly to the Volanthi fleet, they will see the truth for themselves. How do we do that?" Danny asked. "Someone has to get aboard Torvik's flagship and access the main communication array." The room went quiet. "I'll do it," Danny said. Vayana shook her head. "It's too dangerous. Everything about this has been dangerous. I gave you my blood to save your life. Now let me help save both our peoples." Vayana looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and placed her hand over his heart. "You are the bravest human I have ever known," she said. "And if we survive this, I will make sure your people are never looked down upon again." Danny smiled. "Let's survive first. Then we can talk about the future." The battle for the future of two civilizations was about to begin. The Battle of Kethra Rift began at dawn. Not a real dawn, of course. In space, there is no sunrise. But the human commanders had set their clocks to Earth time, and when the hour came, Admiral Holloway gave the order to engage. 50 human ships surged forward against 300 Volanthi warships. It should have been a massacre. The Volanthi had better weapons, better shields, better technology in every measurable way. On paper, the battle would be over in minutes, but humans had never been good at reading paper. Admiral Holloway had spent her entire career studying how to fight enemies with superior numbers. She knew that strength meant nothing if you could not bring it to bear. So she did not fight in open space where the Volanthi could surround her. She pulled her fleet back into the Kethra Rift, a narrow passage between two asteroid fields where only a handful of ships could fit at a time. The Volanthi were forced to come at her in small groups. Their numbers became meaningless. And in close combat, ship against ship, the humans showed what they were made of. Danny watched the battle from the cockpit of a small infiltration shuttle. Ben sat beside him, guiding the craft through the chaos of weapons fire and exploding debris. Their mission was simple: reach Torvik's flagship, get Danny aboard, and broadcast the truth to the entire Volanthi fleet. Simple, but not easy. "There it is," Ben said, pointing through the cockpit window. Torvik's flagship was massive, a mountain of silver metal bristling with weapons. It hung back from the main battle, protected by a ring of escort ships. Getting close would be nearly impossible. "I can get you to the hull," Ben said, "but after that, you're on your own. That's all I need." Danny checked the crystal in his pocket one more time. The whole future of two civilizations rested in that tiny piece of alien technology. No pressure. Ben pushed the shuttle forward, weaving between explosions and burning wreckage. The escort ship spotted them and opened fire. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit as the shuttle took hit after hit. "Hull breach in 30 seconds, the computer announced calmly. "Then we better be there in 20, Ben replied. He pushed the engines beyond their limits. The shuttle screamed through space, trailing fire and smoke. The flagship grew larger and larger in the window until it filled the entire view. Now, Ben said. Danny activated the emergency release. The shuttle's hull split open and he was thrown into the vacuum of space. His suit's emergency thrusters fired automatically, carrying him the final distance to the flagship's outer hull. He hit the metal surface hard and grabbed onto a maintenance handle to keep from bouncing away. Behind him, Ben's shuttle spun out of control and crashed into one of the escort ships, taking it out in a ball of flame. Danny did not have time to mourn. He found an airlock and forced it open, dropping into the corridor inside. The flagship was chaos. Crew members ran in every direction, responding to battle stations and damage reports. Nobody paid attention to the human in the stolen Volante, armor moving through their midst. Danny followed the signs toward the main communication center. He had memorized the ship's layout from stolen intelligence files. 3 corridors, 2 lifts, and 1 security checkpoint stood between him and his goal. He made it through the first 2 corridors without trouble. The lift took him to the command deck, but the security checkpoint was guarded by 6 soldiers, who were not distracted by the battle. Danny had no choice but to fight. He was not a warrior. He was a medic, trained to save lives, not take them. But he had learned basic combat in the military academy, and desperation gave him strength he did not know he possessed. The fight was brutal and ugly. Danny took hits that cracked his ribs and split his lip. But when it was over, 6 soldiers lay unconscious on the floor, and Danny was still standing. He stumbled into the communication center and found the main broadcasting array. His fingers, slick with blood, fumbled with the controls. He inserted the crystal and began the upload. "Stop." Danny turned. Torvik stood in the doorway, a weapon in his hand. "You have caused me a great deal of trouble, human." Torvik's voice was cold as space. "I will enjoy watching you die." "You can kill me," Danny said, "but you can't stop the truth." He pressed the final button. The crystal's contents broadcast across every communication channel in the Volante fleet. The ancient records, the genetic evidence, the history of the seedlings of ash, everything. Torvik screamed in rage and fired his weapon. The beam hit Danny in the shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him to the floor. Pain exploded through his body, but through the agony, Danny smiled. Because on the screens all around him, he could see what was happening. Volante ships were stopping their attack. Captains stared at their screens in disbelief. Soldiers lowered their weapons. The truth was spreading faster than any weapon could destroy. Torvik ran to the controls, trying to shut down the broadcast. But it was too late. The message had already reached every corner of the fleet. "You have ruined everything," Torvik snarled, turning back to Danny with murder in his eyes. Before he could fire again, the wall exploded inward. Vanna burst through the opening, her body blazing with golden light. She had led a boarding party to the flagship, fighting through the corridors to reach the communication center. Behind her came Prince Sareth and a squad of human marines. Torvik turned his weapon toward his niece. "You are an abomination. You have betrayed your own people." "No," Vanna said. "I have saved them." She moved so fast that Danny could barely see her. One moment she was standing by the wall. The next, she was in front of Torvik, her hand closing around his weapon and crushing it like paper. They fought. Despite his age, Torvik was a trained warrior. He struck at Vienna with fists and feet and hidden blades. But she was something beyond Volante now, something ancient and powerful. She blocked his every attack and drove him back across the room. Finally, she caught his arm and threw him to the ground. Her foot pressed against his chest, holding him down. "It's over," she said. Torvik laughed bitterly. "You think killing me will change anything? There will be others who share my beliefs. The old ways will never die. I'm not going to kill you. Diana stepped back. Death would make you a martyr. Instead, you will live. You will watch as our peoples come together. You will see everything you fought against become reality. And you will know that you failed. She turned to the Marines. Take him away. As they dragged Torvik from the room, Diana knelt beside Danny. Her glowing hands touched his wounded shoulder, and warmth spread through his body. The pain began to fade. You did it, she said softly. You changed everything. We did it, Danny replied. Outside, the battle had ended. The Lanthi ships hung motionless in space, their weapons silent. One by one, their captains were contacting Admiral Holloway, asking for peace talks. The war was over before it had truly begun. 3 months later, Danny stood on a balcony in the Imperial Palace of Sirith Prime. Below him, a crowd of millions had gathered. The Lanthi and humans stood side by side, their cheers rising toward the sky. Banners displayed the symbols of both civilizations intertwined. Beside him stood Viana, now officially named heir to the throne after her brother had declined the position. The golden patterns on her skin had become a symbol of hope across the empire, proof that the future would be different from the past. The Empress herself had returned from hiding to address her people. She had publicly embraced the truth of the ancient records and called for a new age of cooperation between species. Today marks the beginning of a new era, the Empress announced to the crowd. Today, we welcome our lost siblings home. The cheers were so loud that Danny could feel them in his bones. Admiral Holloway was there too, representing the human coalition. She had signed treaties that would give humans equal standing in the galaxy for the first time in history. Trade agreements, scientific partnerships, military alliances. Everything had changed. When the ceremony ended, Vanna led Danny to a quiet corner of the balcony, away from the crowds and the cameras. You know, she said, when you gave me your blood, I thought you were a fool. A soft, naive creature from a primitive species doing something that would probably kill us both. And now? Vanna smiled. It was an expression he had never seen on a Volanthi face before, warm and genuine and full of something that looked like affection. Now I know you are still naive, and soft, and sometimes foolish. She placed her hand over his heart, where she could feel it beating. But you are also the bravest person I have ever known, human or Volanthi. Danny looked out at the crowd below, at the mixed faces of two peoples learning to see each other as family instead of enemies. I just wanted to save one life, he said. Vanna nodded. And in doing so, you reminded the galaxy what it means to be human. She leaned against him, and together they watched the sun set over a universe forever changed. He had come to this place as a simple medic, a nobody from a species that the galaxy looked down upon. He was leaving as a hero to two civilizations, a bridge between worlds that had been separated for 100,000 years, all because he had refused to let one person die when he had the power to save her. That, Vanna knew now, was the true strength of humanity. Not their weapons or their technology or their numbers, but their stubborn, impossible, beautiful refusal to give up on each other. And that strength, she believed, would carry them all toward a brighter tomorrow.